Well, I got my clicker to work this time, but I had to walk around the table to get to the camera. You're going to recognize this shirt. It's the same one I had on yesterday, but it's my favorite shirt. It's a Ralph Lauren shirt. I want to thank him for providing this for me. And I always wear a shirt at least twice before I launder it. I don't see that it's dirty enough yet. Before I start with my story, I want to show you a little something. I've been out shopping again, and look what I found. Isn't this cute? It's a little teapot with a cozy. There's no markings on the bottom. I don't know how old it is, but it really didn't matter whether it was old or new to me because I wanted it anyway. This is your cozy. If you've never seen one like this, and I can guarantee it does help keep your tea hot. It's got a lining in it, sort of like a felt lining, and after you put your hot tea in the pot, you slide that right down over it, and it definitely will keep your tea good and hot. The reason I wanted this one was because I've got another one. It's larger than this, and the other one dates back to about 1920s, 1930s. And I had seen it off and on in antique shops for several years, always wanting to buy it. And finally one day when I saw it, I said, today's the day. I'm not waiting any longer. I'm buying that tea cozy. So it's like this, but its cover is silver and the pot is white. I just wanted to show it to you because I think it's cute and it's great for a couple of cups of tea. So I'll put that aside. Now I'm going to go into my story. I'm taking this story from my first book. Okay. This is my first book. Wait till you hear this one. There's 397 pages of stories here. That's a lot of pages. And a lot of good stories. And you know, before you know it, if we can get through Halloween, it's going to be Christmas time. And you're going to be looking for a gift for your best friend, for your mom, for your cousin, maybe even your sister. And one of my books can be ordered from Amazon. Now that's just a little hint in case you're interested. But this story I'm going to take from my book. My daughter says you need to tell the stories. I know that, but my memory just kind of breaks here and there, and I forget where I was and what I was telling. So I thought this time I'm going to read this story to you. It's only 2 pages long. I think you can stick with me that long. And I think you're going to like the story. It's one my mother told me, and I can remember. But let me just get started reading, and I'll tell you about it. This is a story my mother used to tell me. She would get so tickled she had to hold her hand over her mouth to keep from spewing snuff while she talked. Yes, my mother dipped snuff for years. She dipped snuff until the day she died. It was back in the days when Daddy had bought his first car, a 1923 Chevrolet. Now, I know you're just like I am. You don't know what a 1923 Chevrolet looked like. But Mama described it to me, and I'll tell you what it looked like later. But in those days, they didn't have many roads for cars. So, I'll keep reading. You didn't see many cars during those times, and the only roads were those cut out for horse and buggy. It was a rough ride trying to follow the ruts in the roads in a car. Mom and Daddy had spent the day visiting some of her family in Middlesboro, and it was starting to get dark when they decided to run by Daddy's sister's home. His sister Cora and her husband lived on a farm. They were what Mama called dirt farmers. Of course, there were no phones to let his sister know they were coming. People didn't give advance notice when they came to call. They just showed up. If a meal had to be prepared, they went out to the chicken lot and they chose a plump hen or chicken, and with a bowl of gravy, mashed potatoes, which was always handy, and a pan of biscuits, dinner was on the table. Those were the days when farmers went to bed with the chickens. You've heard that expression. They go to bed with the chickens, and the rooster wakes them in the morning. So as soon as it got dark, because they had to be up early at daybreak to eat breakfast, get ready to feed the animals, and work the gardens. It's kind of hard to read because it gets shadow over the pages, and my vision not that good. So I'll continue. Aunt Cora and Uncle Harb were already bedded down for the night, with the kids sleeping in another bedroom. Daddy's car went rambling down the road, chugging right along with the headlights aimed toward the house and directed at Aunt Cora's bedroom window. The window shades were up, and the rumble of the car woke Cora and Harv. They were in such a stupor when they saw the bright light coming through the bedroom window, they raised straight up from the bed, scared them to the life out of them. You never saw such confusion and rambling in your life as when Aunt Cora, a right pudgy little woman, jumped out of bed in her nightgown and began yelling at Harv, "Get up, wake the kids, get them out of bed, the house is on fire." Harv began rambling around and shuffling in the dark room, trying to find his clothes. Where were his trousers? He couldn't find his shirt. Cora had laid her dress and Harv breeches and long-sleeved shirt across the old rocking chair for overnight. They finally grabbed the clothes and rushed to get them on in the dark. Ran through the house yelling, "You kids get up, the house is on fire, get out of the house as fast as you can." Meantime, Daddy drove up beside the house with headlights now facing the front door. He and Mama climbed out of the car, and about that time, the front door of the house flew open and bodies came pouring out on the porch. Mama and Daddy didn't know what to make of such yelling and the commotion that went on. Then they saw Aunt Cora and Uncle Harb leap off the high wooden porch. Now that porch was about 4 to 6 feet high off the ground, and I can just imagine that. They didn't even take time to go down the steps. A handful of kids dressed in their nightshirts, screaming and hollering, were right behind them. The family hit the dirt running. The kids were going in circles, not knowing what to do. Mom and Daddy stood there staring at the commotion, and suddenly, Cora and Harv stopped running. They saw Mom and Daddy. At the same time, they both suddenly realized the house was not on fire. What they saw through the bedroom window was the headlights of my daddy's car. Mom and Daddy began laughing. They were laughing so hard, my Aunt Cora and Uncle Harv couldn't understand what was so funny, and they looked down at themselves. Short, pudgy Cora stood there in the bright light wearing Harv's long plaid work shirt that fell below her knees and sleeves that came down over her hands. Harv had on Cora's dress with his long legs and nubby knees showing beneath the hem of the dress. all of a sudden, everybody was laughing so hard they could hardly control themselves. That was the first time Cora and Harp had ever seen a car. That was my dad's first car. There were no road signs. You didn't have any directions. You remember when you used to put your arm out the window when you wanted to turn left and then when you wanted to turn right. They didn't have even that. And Daddy had gone downtown that day looking around, and Mama was learning, don't give Daddy a check, don't put a check in his shirt pocket because he'll find something to spend it on. Well, that day Daddy's wandering around on Main Street, and I believe a dealer had talked my daddy into buying worn out tires. And even in those days, the tires were not bouncy like the ones we have today. Those tires were more like wagon wheels. So Daddy comes home driving a 1923 Chevrolet. Mama said it had covers over the side windows that snapped on when the weather was bad or windy. And I have never seen a car like that, but it being one of the first ones, I'm sure they didn't know how to insert windows, but the front of the car had to have had windows, and it cranked. Daddy had to crank up the car. And the first time he drove up in the car, of course, what was Mama going to say? He had already bought it. She couldn't tell him, take it back. My oldest sister was 7 years old. Another one was 5. And there was probably my older brother, who was small. Hopped in the back seat of the car. Daddy goes down the road, and you can imagine what it was like in a car like that. It was bumpity, bumpity, bump all the way. And my sister's head kept hitting the roof of the car. And Daddy said she reached up, grabbed him around the neck, and started squealing at him that he was hurting her head. He had to stop the car to control her. This was her first ride in a car. This was my family's first car. Now, along with that, before my mother and Dad were married, she would go from the farm. The farm was in the hills of Virginia and Tennessee. The farm was divided by the state line. The barn was in Virginia and the house was in Tennessee. And she would go from Caylor, I don't know where Caylor is, but within that neighborhood, she'd get on I was going to tell you the name of the car, it was like a little bus, but it was more the size of a station wagon. And right now, I can't remember what it was called. That's what the memory does. But anyway, that was my mother's first ride in a motor vehicle. It was 15 miles, and the roads were so bad, and the huge rocks were in the middle of those dirt roads. She said by the time she got home from Middlesboro, that her body felt like it was still bouncing, and when she would go to bed at night, she felt like she was still on why won't the name of that car come to me? I'm going to tell you what it was later. I have to look it up. This is what you can expect from me. I forget. And in 5 minutes, I'll remember. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in, the story about my Aunt Cora and my Uncle Harv. Times were hard then. And as Mama said, they were dirt farmers, which meant daylight to dark. They worked, went to bed, and up first thing in the morning, back out in the fields, in the garden for more work. Aunt Cora, I think, eventually ended up in either Oklahoma or Texas with some of my uncles. She was very ill, and my Uncle Tillman, who was the oldest, well, he was next to the oldest brother, had come back to Tennessee and Virginia to get Aunt Cora, take her home with him. And it wasn't long after that that she died. So that's my little story for today. Fortunately, it didn't take 45 minutes to tell it, but I hope you enjoyed the humor in the story. I think you can visualize Aunt Cora and Uncle Harv in their night clothes, her in his long shirt and him in her dress. That had to be a sight for sore eyes. I really think I would like to have been there to see what that was like. Thanks for watching. I'm going to keep clicking.